What is up guys, it's Cal, and in this video I'm going to be talking about the changes that Assassination rogues will be facing coming in battle for Azeroth. Now this is the beta, so I'll be going over the baseline abilities which aren't really pruned that much, but then also the talents along with the PvP talents. Now if you're watching this video wanting to know which talents you should pick for the best DPS, or if Assassination is better than the other two specs of DPS, well, this isn't the video for you. Because as I mentioned, this is beta. Telling you that information now would be pretty useless due to how much it's going to change before the final release. But anyways, let's get started. Now these are all the baseline abilities for Assassination rogues. I don't necessarily think that they got rid of any, but let's go through them. First we have Vanish. Vanish is staying the exact same. Evasion, staying the exact same, increases your dodge chance by 100% for 10 seconds, 2-minute cooldown. Crimson Vial is also unchanged, but remember you won't have your artifact weapon anymore, so it won't reduce the damage you take whenever you use Crimson Vial. Cloak of Shadows is getting a slight nerf. It does the same thing where it provides a moment of magical immunity, instantly removing all harmful spell effects, and then it causes you to resist harmful spell effects for 5 seconds. The nerf is that it's going from a baseline of 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes. I know your artifact weapon reduces that below 1.5 minutes, but baseline it's 1.5 minutes. But that is being increased to 2 minutes. Blind, staying the exact same, getting no nerf or buff whatsoever. So Feint is getting a nerf. It's still going to cost 35 energy, but it's going to be on a 15-second cooldown, and then on top of that, it's going to reduce the AoE damage you take by 40% for 5 seconds instead of 50%. Poison Knife isn't being changed at all. Phantom Knives, also not being changed at all. Vendetta is getting a bit of a buff. It's still going to do the exact same thing, 2-minute cooldown, but on top of that, it's going to generate 60 energy over 3 seconds. Picklock is still there, does the same thing. Same thing with Tricks of the Trade, it is still doing the same thing. You redirect your threat onto a target that you use it on. Mutilate getting a slight buff, it's going to now cost 50 energy, down from 55 energy. And then these next 3 finishing moves do the same thing. Envenom does the same thing with Rupture and Kidney Shot, they are not getting changed at all. Shadow Step is also not getting changed. Kick, still your interrupt, 15-second cooldown, not changed from live. And then Sprint, also not changed from live, 1-minute cooldown, increases your movement speed by 70% for 8 seconds. And then looking at the poisons, they're also all unchanged. Wound Poison is unchanged. It is a lethal poison that has a 50% chance to reduce the healing that the target takes. Crippling Poison is also staying unchanged. It's a non-lethal poison where each strike has a 50% chance to poison the enemy, slowing their movement speed by 50% for 12 seconds. And then you can talent that up to 60%, but baseline on both live and BFA is 50%. And then Deadly Poison, lethal poison, does the exact same thing. Now let's stealth here and look at the stealth abilities. Cheap Shot is unchanged. It's still a stun, 40 energy, stuns target 4 seconds, and gives 2 combo points. Garrott's cooldown was reduced from 15 seconds down to 6 seconds, or Garrote, however you say it. Pickpocket, staying the exact same. Sap is unchanged. Distract is unchanged. Shroud of Concealment is getting an interesting buff. It's now going to apply to party members within 30 yards of you, instead of 20 yards. So a very big circle. Very big circle. And then let's look at the passive abilities. Fleet-footed is unchanged. Your movement speed is increased by 15% and you take reduced falling damage. That is the same as live. Your mastery, Master Potent Assassin is what it's being renamed to because it is getting changed slightly. It seems the percentage was about halved, although the percentage of course varies depending on your mastery. But it just seems like that the percentage for the mastery was reduced because it's also going to apply to your bleeds. So not your poisons, but your poisons and your bleeds. And then Seal Fate is unchanged, still a passive. When you critically strike with a melee attack that generates combo points, you gain an additional combo point. And then Venomous Wounds is pretty much staying unchanged. You regain 7 energy each time your Garrote, Rupture, or Internal Bleeding deal bleed damage to a poison target. And the talent Venom Rush is getting changed to not buff Venomous Wounds. I'll talk about that talent when I get to the talents, but the second effect still does the same. If an enemy dies while afflicted by your Rupture, you regain energy based on its remaining duration. So that is it for the baseline abilities. Now let's look at the talents. Now let's take a look at the talents, and since PvP talents were introduced onto the beta, I'll go over these as well in case you care. Now for the first tier, Master Poisoner is unchanged. It still increases the damage done by your weapons poisons by 30% and their non-damaging effects by 20%. Elaborate Planning is getting a slight nerf. Your finishing moves will now grant 10% increased damage over 4 seconds instead of 12% that's on live. And then Blindside is new. This is a 30 energy thing. Exploits vulnerabilities of foes with less than 30% health, dealing that much physical damage damage to the target. Mutilate has a 25% chance to make your next blindside free and usable on any target regardless of their health. So this is like an execute ability that you can use on targets below 30% health, but then as it states, Mutilate has a chance to let you use it no matter their health. Second tier, Night Stalker is staying the same. While your stealth is active, you move 20% faster and your abilities deal 50% extra damage. Subterfuge is getting a slight nerf. It'll increase the damage of your Garrote by 100% instead of the 125% that it is on live. And then Master Assassin is becoming a talent. So Master Assassin was what rogues had for their legendary shoulders. They just took the legendary shoulder effect and made it a talent, but they nerfed it slightly. So what it does is while stealth is active and for 3 seconds after breaking stealth, your crit strike chance is increased by 50%, whereas the legendary shoulders on live, it's 100%. Third tier, Vigor is staying the same, increases maximum energy by 50 and increases energy regeneration by 10%. Deeper Stratagem, staying the same. You may have a maximum of 6 combo points, your finishing moves consume up to 6 combo points, and your finishing moves deal 5% increased damage. Those two are unchanged. So Anticipation was removed, as you see around here. It's not here. It was instead replaced with Marked for Death. So Marked for Death was all the way down here. They moved it up here. And then it was just buffed slightly, and now is a 30-second cooldown down from 1 minute cooldown. Other than that, it does the same thing. This tier is completely unchanged. Leeching Poison will grant you a baseline of 10% leech, though that does go up to 12% leech if you do have the Master Poisoner talent on. Elusiveness staying the same. Feint will reduce all damage from non-AoE effects by 30% for 5 seconds, and then Cheat Death. We know what Cheat Death does, that's staying the same. So this next tier, Internal Bleeding, is just changing slightly. It's now going to do bleed damage over 6 seconds instead of on live. It's 12 seconds. Iron Wire is new. Passive ability. Increases the duration of Garrote's silence effect by 3 seconds, and then enemy silenced by Garrote deal 15% reduced damage for 8 seconds. And then the only change to Pray for the week is that enemies disabled by your Cheap Shot or Kidney Shot take 10% increased damage instead of the 15% that it does on live over 6 seconds. So Thuggy was removed. Venom Rush was moved up to this tier and it has changed. It will no longer buff venomous wounds. It now affects Mutilate. Mutilate refunds 5 energy when used against a poisoned target. Toxic Blades are getting a slight nerf. Your nature damage done against the target is increased by 30% for 9 seconds, where on live that's 35%. And then Exsanguinate, hopefully I said that right, is also getting a slight nerf. It's still going to cost the same amount of energy, same cooldown, but your bleed effects on the target will now bleed out 100% faster instead of 150% faster. Now final tier, I like this tier. Poison Bomb is returning, but it's in the form of a talent because you won't have your artifact weapon anymore. They took that artifact ability and then changed it into a talent. And it is getting buffed, so it will have a 4% now, instead of 2.5%, chance per combo point spent to smash a vial on the ground, and it deals nature damage to all enemies around you for 2 seconds instead of 3 seconds. Hidden Blades is new. It's a passive ability, and every 2 seconds you gain 20% increased damage for your next fan of knives, and that stacks up to 20 times. So a nice AoE ability there. That's a 400% increased damage to Fan of Knives after a 40-second period of not using Fan of Knives, I assume. Now Crimson Tempest is returning. So we have seen this before. It was removed in Legion, but it is now returning. It's going to cost 35 energy, which I believe it did before, and it's a finishing move that slashes all enemies within 10 yards, dealing instant damage and causing victims to bleed for additional damage, and it lasts longer per combo point. So that's the combo point breakdown right there. So now for PvP talents. If you didn't watch my video going over how PvP talents work in BFA, this is essentially how it goes. There are 4 bubbles. They look like what glyph bubbles used to look like. The first slot is the same for all talents and all specs in the game. It's Adaptation, Gladiator's Medallion, and Relentless, which do the exact same thing that they do on live. You can pick between one of these 3. And then the next 3 bubbles are completely dependent on your class and spec. So they're different for everyone, pretty much. So as you see, it's not a tier system anymore. They just put a bunch of PvP talent and a pool that you can pick from. So I could pick this one if I want to, I could pick that one, and I can pick this one if I wanted to. But anyways, let's go over what these PvP talents are. Some of them have changed just slightly, and I'll be going over those. If they haven't changed, I'm just going to say their name, and if you want to know what they do, you can pause the video, I guess, or read what they do on live in your honor talents. But anyways, there's Intent to Kill, Shiv, which was changed slightly. It's going to be a 12-second cooldown now from a 10-second cooldown, and it will go back to Dispelling and Rage effects, because I believe before Shiv was a PvP talent and Rogues just had it baseline, it did do that, but then they switched it into a PvP talent. They took that Rage thing off, but now it's going to go back to Dispelling and Rage effects. Honor Among Thieves Deadly Brew, which was also changed slightly. Deadly Poison is going to apply a minor version of the wound poison to a target for 8 seconds, which will reduce their healing received by 15%. Versus, I think it's 30% is the non-minor version. There's Mind-Numbing Poison, Flying Daggers, System Shock, Neurotoxin, Maneuverability, Death from Above, which is becoming a PvP talent now. It used to be a normal talent, now it's a PvP talent. What it does is it costs 25 energy, 30-second cooldown, 1 to 5 combo points, finishing move that empowers your weapon with shadow energy and performs a devastating attack. You then leap into the air and envenom your target on the way back down with such force that it has a 15% stronger effect. There's also Creeping Venom, which as a hunter, I hate Creeping Venom so much. But anyways, Smoke Bomb is going to be a PvP talent for Assassination rogues also, because I believe before it was only a PvP talent for sub rogues. Now it's PvP talent for Assassination as well. And I believe it does the same thing, a 3-minute cooldown, 8-yard radius for 5 seconds, and enemies are unable to target into or out of the smoke cloud. And that's it. Those are all of the talents for Assassination rogues. And there you have it. Those are all the current changes that Assassination rogues will be going through in Battle for Azeroth. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, this is the beta, so things are definitely subject to change. I'm curious to know what you guys think. Do you main an Assassination rogue, or rogue in general, and do you enjoy the changes, or do you hate them? I am genuinely curious. But if you guys like this video, you can leave a like on it, sub to the channel for more videos like this, and I'll see you guys in the next video.